It's tabletop time. I'm Dave, and today we're going to be exploring the world of 3D scanning. This video has been sponsored by Creality, and they have sent us the Creality Lizard, and we're going to be actually checking out if it's appropriate for our hobby of miniature painting, what it can and can't achieve, and how to get the most out of this emerging technology in our hobby world. Now, the first thing I need to do is get to grips with this software and then run some experiments, scanning some objects, such as this Space Bears bust, and just see what we can do. So let's get down to it.
The first thing I wanted to try out with the 3D scanner was table mode, basically placing an object on this rotating turntable and scanning it from all angles. This immediately seemed like the closest use or closest scale for mini stuff, so I wanted to give it a crack. The first thing you do is put the object on the middle of the bed, get the angle right, and then you do something called initializing, which is basically where it scans the rotating disc so it knows to separate this from the object later. Alright, just looking around, I think these Marvel United models are going to be a perfect tester. In particular, the Hulk is looking good. His pose, his shape, his sort of simpler geometry, but lots of detail sculpting. I think that'll be a really good test. So, let's do it. Now our little Hulk seemed like the perfect model, and with that rotating on the turntable, you can see the lizard starting to pick up all the details. Now the process here is fairly straightforward. You place an object at the appropriate distance on this disc, it rotates a whole bunch, and then you do it again. And again and again. When each scan is done, you get a little map of data points, and you can see that the disk is already highlighted, which makes it super easy to just press delete and remove. This is the advantage to that initialization system, which basically masks off that disk. With all the Hulks isolated, it was time to align them. Now the software has an auto align feature that is pretty accurate. It seems to mostly work except when there's weird outlying situations. And when you do come into those situations, you have a manual alignment option. In the manual alignment, you get a bunch of tracking points and you connect them from one model to the next, and then it will align the models based on those points. I did find on a model as small as the Hulk, the manual tracking was a little bit more difficult to use. In areas where there weren't really clear data points from a particular scan, it was hard to identify sections that were exactly the same on two different models. Ultimately, this meant that I just lent on the auto align and actually removed the scans that were causing any major trouble. With all these scans together, I used the software to process it, and this basically takes all the data that's been scanned and turns it into a 3D model. And there you go. Overall, given the size, I think this is pretty good. It obviously lacks a level of extremely crisp detail, especially in the face, and the fingers on the hands didn't scan particularly well. Now this isn't surprising, as it can scan objects as small as 15mm, and I'd say his fingers, which stand very independent from his body when outstretched, are much smaller than this. Overall, I can say I'm not particularly surprised. I think this is pretty good accuracy and really is pushing the boundaries of what the technology can do at this small scale. I did want to see though if I could refine this process, so I took a few extra scans using different settings and different modes to try and capture those tiny elements like his fingers and his face. Ultimately, after doing these scans, I found I didn't get any major improvement. If anything, having too many overlapping versions of the Hulk being aligned was actually making it more complicated to align them and to process a final model. I think there's a sweet spot in the number of scans you have, especially when you're repeatedly scanning very similar angles with maybe just different brightness settings. It kind of just muddies the water. So while I don't think 3D scanning is going to be replicating tiny, high detail miniatures just yet, I wanted to see what it could do that would be really cool for the hobby. So on a whim, I grabbed the hand scanner and it was time to test out the hand scanning mode. I flicked it past a wax candle, which was either so reflective or absorbed the light so effectively that it just wouldn't pick up at all on the scanner. Then I skimmed the scanner over my face, and oh my gosh, was I surprised by how amazing it picked up my facial features. This is definitely something I'm going to explore later in the video. However, before I got distracted scanning heads, I wanted to explore something which I've been thinking about a lot. If 3D scanning can't quite replicate the tiniest details of miniatures right now, what other uses are there for the hobby? And I realized that if we can't make tiny things big just yet, we could probably make big things tiny, and that's going to be hugely useful. The first thing I wanted to try was this awesome alien egg that Amy had made that was sitting on her desk. And I found the scanner picked it up really well. At this stage, I was just adjusting to learning how to use the handheld scanning mode, and I was still sitting at a table. I think I'd advise standing up and being able to walk around the object you're scanning for this mode, as it makes it significantly simpler. Overall though, the quality of the scan was exceptional, and it really was picking up all the details super well. With a finished scan of this alien egg, you'd easily be able to shrink it down and duplicate it and print a whole bunch of these disgusting alien egg pods as basing materials or terrain for your model projects. After this test, there was an old Macintosh computer that I really wanted to scan, but unfortunately, something about the surface of this particular model was not working too well. This was the only model I attempted that I actually couldn't scan. So I guess there's just some weird surface finish on it that reflects light and makes it impossible to 3D scan. Maybe early Macintosh defenses from the enemies of the future, who knows?
So as you've seen today, the sponsor of the video is Creality, and this is the CR Scan Lizard. The Lizard boasts scanning accuracy of up to 0.05 millimeters, which gives it a level of detail comparative to scanners that cost several $1,000s while costing $6.99. Previous iterations of 3D scanners have meant you had to place little marker dots on the things that you wanted to scan. The Lizard does away with that, and that's not the only ease of use feature that's been added. Multiple modes of scanning mean that not only can you use the scanner in handheld mode, but also in table mode, allowing for really simple scanning of small to medium-sized objects. They've recently moved to CR Studio 2.0, which has an easy-to-use UI design. The new software also boasts optimized algorithms to avoid the model losing track while scanning, which makes the experience even easier for hobbyists to get into. And it doesn't stop here. Creality support is continuing onwards with regular software updates, and this software and the support are completely free. And Creality have self-developed a multi-spectrum optical system, which is tech jargon for it scans dark and lights better than ever before. The scanning capabilities of the Lizard are improved even more so, with a minimum scanning size of 15 millimeters, allowing hobbyists to attempt smaller and smaller scans. And if you're not as experienced with 3D modeling as me, Creality offers simple one-click optimization. So if you're a tech adopter or you love 3D printing and want to add 3D scanning to your repertoire, check out the link in our description and head on over and consider grabbing a Creality Lizard. And if you're not sure just yet, keep watching and find out how I made Jen and Gareth tiny Warhammer minis. We have a Jen. I have summoned a Jen.
Hello.
We've tested out the scanner on some small things, but I really want to see how it works with scanning people.
Is it painful at all? Like, am I?
Yeah. It's kind of like getting a tattoo.
Oh, great.
No, it's not painful at all.
Awesome.
It's basically completely fine.
Oh, fantastic.
Are you happy being Jen, or would you like to be Astroprimus Jen?
Oh, Astroprimus Jen, yeah.
Luckily, we have a little bit of a costume. All right, so let's see what we can do with scanning. We're gonna go into a sick time lapse and see if we can turn Jen into like a bust. I don't know. Let's give it a crack.
Sick.
Experimenting is the name of the game.
So the process of scanning people is super simple in the easy mode. You just hold the scanner upright and basically walk around them. Occasionally, the camera will lose tracking if you don't move smoothly enough, but it seems to be incredibly resilient to this and quite intelligent. I was surprised by the fact that whenever it would lose the person or lose the tracking, if I just moved the camera back to an area of the model that had previously been scanned, it would rapidly resync and I'd be able to continue from there. The one area on models that doesn't scan particularly well are highly reflective semi-transparent surfaces. That's hair. So hair is a little bit of a sticking point, and in my first attempt of Gen Scan, she had her fringe down and it was basically just becoming a little bit wild, leaving a whole bunch of artifacts and not picking up the full detail of the hair.
All right, so I've had a look at the scan. I'm not actually gonna bother cleaning that up, doing another take, etc., because I can already tell the issues, but they're far outweighed by the positives. So the scanner doesn't seem to be able to pick up fur and hair very well, so it's treating them as sort of areas to stop scanning. Now, where it is scanning your face and neck, it's actually doing a really impressively good job. I'm surprised at the quality, and I think scanning your face or anyone's face and then shrinking that down to mini scale is actually gonna be super easy with a tiny bit of 3D modeling experience. So what I reckon we'll do is if you put your hair up and we take this Space Bear thing off, we'll try just getting a clean scan of your face and see if I can shrink that down.
All right, cool, well, let's go.
You're good to take that off?
I need help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it the baby Bjorn that's...
Yeah.
Little known secret fact, Jazz's Space Bear costume is held together with a baby Bjorn.
Oh,
With lessons learned from the first attempt of the face scan and Jen's hair pinned up, I went back in for another scan. We had worked out that fur and hair basically act as limiting lines, things that the scanner can't pick up and would be impossible to skim over large areas as it would lose tracking. So we abandoned the idea of the space bear pauldrons, as the large fur trim pretty much just made it impossible to scan the rest of them. Aside from those minor problems, scanning Jen's face was an absolute breeze. And once it was scanned and chucked into processing, I was also impressed to see that the little artifacts were all automatically removed by the post-processing. Now I have some basic knowledge of Blender and 3D modeling, so I already know that I'd like to take these head scans in and do some slight tweaks to them. But the software can actually just auto-export a 3D printable version, so you can have a head or bust printed pretty quickly and easily. Although remembering that consideration of the hair is a bit of a sticking point.
You ready to see your face?
Yes, I am.
Jen.
Oh my God.
It is you in 3D.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
And any areas that didn't scan completely, like behind your ears, it just fills in. And with a little bit of a brush in Blender, I can easily just boop.
Yeah, it like 100% like looks like my face.
With Jen's head imported, you can see that it did actually manage to pick up the broader areas of hair decently well. She'd need to have a full head, so I just chucked a sphere in there in Blender, something to give a bit of shape to it. Knowing that this would be printed specifically for miniature scale, I knew we needed to go for quite thick, exaggerated hair shapes. If they look big in Blender, they're going to look absolutely tiny on the real model. To do this, I created paths and a NURB circle, and then I used the circle as a reference for the paths, giving it the rough shape of hair with a little bit of interest to it. These horrible pool noodle hair things look terrible right now, but with the ability to start hitting them with the scale tool, I began to make them actually look like hair, thickening them out at areas and tapering them to a point at the end of each exaggerated strand. The Sisters of Battle bob cut is pretty iconic, and that's what I was going for Jen. Now it was time for me to add a bit of battle damage. Jen had requested a scar, so I used the sculpting tools to cut a nasty line down Jen's cheek and across her eyebrow. Now I didn't have any Sisters of Battle at hand, but we do have a copy of Blackstone Fortress at the studio, and there's a pious sister, a fanatic missionary of the church that is basically very similar to the Sisters of Battle in design. I thought this would be a perfect model for Jen's head.
Okay, it's time to show Jen what she looks like as a mini. Jen, are you ready?
Yes.
Here you go. Take a look. Grab it and have a good look.
That is sick.
Yeah?
I love it. It actually is kind of amazing how well the face, like the scale you've got it at is like 100%.
Once the primer goes on it, you can just see it's you immediately.
Yeah. I love it so much. Thank you.
Now, anytime Jazza plays it's actually Jazz's copy of Blackstone Fortress. Anytime he plays, he permanently has to play with Jen as one of the characters now, because I cut the head off and threw it in the bin. Thanks.
Bye.
Alright.
So if you keep up to date with movements around the studio here, you'll know that editor, production master, and all-round fantastic guy Gareth is leaving us. So as sad as we are to know that Gareth is leaving, we thought we could make this a special opportunity to immortalize him and make him part of the TTT canon forever.
Oh, that's sweet. Thanks, man.
What do you want to do?
Just want
Okay.
to touch
Okay, there you go.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have a preference for the kind of person you want to be? Because if you can hold a face for like a minute, you'll be able to have that pose as well.
Can I do like the raised eyebrow?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I want to be a grunt. What's the infantry? What's the ones on the
A
ground?
guardsman.
A guardsman?
Hell yeah.
All right.
Gareth the guardsman. Okay, let's
Sounds
do
good.
it.
Do you want my eyes just to go anywhere?
Straightforward's fine, because
Can I blink?
you can blink. Yep, it's actually pretty resilient to things like that.
Really hard to keep my eyebrow like this.
But we're almost done the front of your face. So then once I've got your chin, it does also struggle with beards and facial hair.
Okay, I don't have any. I feel very special being immortalized.
Yeah, it's you and Jen.
I appreciate this.
The two people I love are the two people that are getting immortalized.
Stop it.
So I'm pretty sure the hat's going to be fine. The chin, though, because of the facial hair, is not going to be fine. But robot jaw,
Robot jaw.
I love it.
Yeah.
Very cyberpunk, very futuristic.
Love it. Love it.
I think it's done a really good job on you.
Yeah.
I didn't get any data because I didn't scan between your hat and your neck, so it's filled that in. But all of this can be modified with the power of 3D modeling. So I'm gonna take this export and we're gonna eternally have the Gareth Guardsman.
I love that.
Thank you, Gareth.
Thank you.
Don't leave us, but leave us because you got your own ventures to do.
Thank you.
Good.
So Gareth's scan had come out really well. It had perfectly captured the expression he'd been pulling. And the first thing I did with this model though was actually just stitch together and fix up the bottom of his neck where I didn't need that additional detail. I just pulled all the geometry together, smoothed it out and blended it in the sculpting tool. This is a really easy hack for fixing holes in 3D models that seems to work really fine for 3D printing. I'm sure some experts out there will tell me 5 reasons why it is wrong, but I'm going to tell you one reason why it's right. It works. Oh, and a free reason. It's easy. The next thing to work on was Gareth's robo jaw. Now this was pretty simple geometry because once again, you have to remember the scale that we're working at. 28mm heads don't need to be overly detailed because that detail just isn't going to print. I just extruded some fairly simple geometry and moved about bits until it was the rough shape of a jaw. For the next stage, it was time to add some gribblies that made the jaw feel a little bit more connected to the body. So just added a vertical strut and put a small rivet or connecting hinge on the corner of his jaw. I also added a little diode similar to those on power weapons connecting out into his cheek. On the other side, I wanted to go for some asymmetry, so I made a square panel with some grills in it, once again replicating what we often see in 40K with this simple design. And then on the areas where the jaw met the skin, I used a similar technique to what I'd done on Jen's face and just gouged in some scars. As a final touch and a perfect little accent for Guardsman, I channeled my inner love of 80s action films, Predator and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I made sure to make Gareth a stogie.
All right, you ready to see?
Let's see it, let's see it.
Here you go.
Oh my god! Actually, you've got the snapback on as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like that. That's incredible.
It's so good.
And I got my boomstick there. How do you get that much detail out of such a tiny little thing?
Well, that was the 3D scanner that did the work there.
Oh, that was a good plug. I didn't even mean that whatsoever. Can I get a copy of this somehow?
I reckon I can probably do 2 trader guards and just give you one. And
I would love that.
Yeah. When we do
This is really, really cool.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. You want that one?
Yeah, I want this one.
That one's kind of one of a kind. You know what?
Thank you very much to all of our patrons for supporting this video. If you're interested in checking out our Patreon, make sure you click the links in the description. We put out weekly videos as well as a monthly mini review. We check out all your minis. It's really a lot of fun and our mini Discord is quite active and it would be absolutely amazing to see you down there.
There you have it, everyone. I think we've had a good explore of the Creality CR Lizard and just where laser scanning is at today. I actually think this product is super interesting and it reminds me a lot of when I backed and bought early into 3D printing. The stuff you could do was super exciting and really is a hobby of its own. I don't think we're in a world where we can scan tiny little Warhammer models just yet and have them print perfectly, but with Creality constantly updating their software and their hardware, I don't see that as being a world that is infinitely far away. But where I thought the Lizard super shone and was super easy to use was actually scanning people. And whether you want to use their one-click software to get a simple rendered version of the head and sculpt some hair on yourself, or you've got a little bit of competence with sculpting programs like Blender, you can really put yourself in the worlds of miniatures for what is honestly the first time ever, which is super exciting. So thank you all for watching and thank you once again to Creality for sponsoring the video. Remember to check out the link in our description to find out more about the CR Lizard. And as for me, I'm gonna head off and you'll see me very soon on this channel if you like and subscribe and watch the next video. Maybe, unless it's Jen or Murray, but it might be me.